Hi, Joe. Today's video that we want to do is about Canada's foreign policy. Joe, you work at the McDonald Law Institute. You are a research associate there. What can we expect in the coming 6 to 8 months?
That's a great question. Since October 7th happened last year, it's been about 8 months since has been on the rampage against Hamas with the hope of destroying them and rescuing the remaining hostages. The Gaza conflict has gone on for a while now. I mean, it's moved on to the southern part of Gaza in Rafah. Israel has come very close to achieving its goals in the southern Gaza city, and which in fact was Hamas's final stronghold. So we can expect to see the possibility of a shift in Israeli military operations. They would probably be moving to a newer, less intense phase of the conflict. And as you saw the reports from a couple of days ago, the IDF claims to have gotten rid of about 50% of the Hamas, the terror force. I think they killed about 550 terrorists. Their focus has been to destroy the tunnels. From the perspective of the Israelis, I would say this is a massive success in the military operation. Of course, we have had a lot of the innocent Palestinian civilians caught in the crossfire. But when we see this shift take place, you can also expect the civilians who are being affected by this assault to get some form of respite as well. The Israelis it might be possible for more humanitarian aid to come into Gaza. We might see more willingness from the Saudis to engage with the Israelis too, and also potentially the possibility of reaching a ceasefire deal and freeing the Israeli hostages from Hamas. Though I feel that's still going to be quite hard, because the objective of Hamas would be to try and stay alive as long as possible. I don't see the Hamas leadership, and the hostages are their trump card. If they give up the hostages, they have lost any advantage that they have. Because if the Israelis don't kill them today during the ground assault, they know that the Israelis will come after them at some point later to finish them off. So Canadians can expect, this conflict to go on for a significant period of time. I would imagine this will definitely stay on until the end of the year.
You touched base on a couple of things. Could you explain what's the bigger picture of Iran and Saudis look like in this whole thing, and because that directly connects to the Canadian foreign policy as well.
As you're aware, Hezbollah have ramped up their attacks in the northern border with Israel. You are going to see increased activity there as well. How the IDF targets Hezbollah will be very interesting. And again, Hezbollah, given that they are a proxy arm of the Iranian regime, a lot of their orders and counsel would be coming from Tehran. So it'll be very interesting to see how Nasrallah gets his forces to attack Israel. Nasrallah gave a speech threatening to attack not just Israel, but also Cyprus, which is rather interesting. It appeared to be making a case that Hezbollah is more than capable of increasing their attacks and inflicting significant damage on the Israelis. The Israelis are going to be very surgical about it. They're going to retain that element of surprise. As far as the Iranians are concerned, the mullahs do not want to be drawn into a full-blown regional war. They know that if that would happen, the Americans would come, and Americans and other Western allies of Israel will also come into the play. So the dynamics are very different. The Canadian government is now finally preparing to list Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, the IRGC, as a terrorist organization under Canada's criminal code. What this essentially means is the police can charge anyone who is financially or materially supports a group, and banks can even freeze their assets and funds, which is pretty significant. Having said that, though, is this enough to try and curtail the efforts and the influence of the Iranian mullahs? Not really, but this is definitely a step in the right direction.
Maybe you can on this, or you can also comment a bit about the foreign agent registry as well.
The problem with Canada often is that even though we have rules to address a lot of our problems, it's a failure to implement these rules effectively. As far as the foreign interference bill goes, again, really glad to see that being passed in both the House and the Senate. So that's pretty remarkable. Hopefully, in the coming days and months, the government gets more serious about tackling the issues of foreign interference and domestic terrorism. As a policy analyst, I'm very disappointed in the Trudeau government's handling of the conflict since the very beginning. Just looking at the statements, it's very clear that whatever they say and do is very reactive, depending on which way the wind is blowing. And for the most part, for Israel and for the Jewish community in Canada, it also I've been quite disappointed in the lack of support that they have gotten from the Canadian government, considering that Canada-Israel ties go back over 75 years. I mean, we were among the first countries to recognize the independence of Israel. It's not just with the policy on the Israel-Palestine conflict. You can see it in all the policy areas as well, whether it is on the issue of Ukraine. The Trudeau government hasn't been convincing. And so has Foreign Minister Melanie Joly. She has been absolutely lost, clueless about what's happening. I mean, Canada as a G7 country, as a global leader, we are in the backseat. No one's taking us seriously, whether it is comes to NATO or even our ties elsewhere with the US or India or Italy. Our allies don't take us seriously. And that is a reflection of our foreign policy. Based on how different communities feel about the conflict, they then make a decision on how's the best way to take a position on the conflict. And that is not the way you deal with conflict of the nature of what's playing out in Gaza, which has serious national security repercussions, not just national security, but also global security. We're seeing how there has been a significant increase in jihadi terror attacks across the globe. Trudeau needs to recognize that his inaction when it comes to foreign policy is a serious threat to national security, on Canadian national security. By him being silent and not being proactive to address this problem in the Middle East and supporting one of our closest allies, in the long term, that is going to affect us. We are seeing the significant attacks, increase in attacks against the Jewish community. The entire country is in turmoil, and the Prime Minister is refusing to address this increasing domestic terror threat. We are seeing young kids being radicalized, and nothing is being done to address that. And as a consequence, Canadians are going to be struggling to come to terms with it in the long term, is what I strongly believe and what I'm really worried about. As Canadians, I think it's very important to understand the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. There are a lot of nuances to this conflict, and not everything is black and white. But the fact remains that as a country, Canada and many of our allies, we recognize the right for Israel to exist. And this was the right given to them in 1948. Israel and the Jewish people, the land that they have now is indigenous to them. There's no question about it. It's very important for Canadians to recognize that history. Well, we need to stay united and try and address our differences in an amicable way. The Israel-Palestine conflict is an extremely sensitive matter, and people on both sides are affected equally. But it is important to recognize the impact that it is doing to our society, our social fabric. My appeal would be to various community leaders to recognize that we as Canadians need to be standing together and not falling for vote bank politics or the divisive pro-Hamas propaganda spreading. We need to be very careful that you protect yourselves from it and recognize that what is affecting Israel today is going to affect all of us eventually. Today it's Israel, tomorrow it's going to be Canada and the rest of the West.
No, thank you for sharing with us your important, valuable opinion.
Thank you so much, Ganesh, for your time. We appreciate the opportunity again. Thank you.